bringing effectively the whole building line right out to this edge of the building, so right at that tidal boundary.
Where the balustrade currently is?
Actually where the edge of the columns are. Yeah, so that's kind of the extent of our tidal at the moment. So we're bringing the lease line or the glass line all the way to the extent of those, so capturing more space internally. That also allows us to create this double height opening, this double height void space here. So where this drum is currently, we're proposing to take up the ground level to where that sort of first transom is, I suppose. So where the differentiator is between the colours and the grey and the sort of light scheme, where that band is, that band sort of gets continued in the new scheme all the way around, and then everything from that point below becomes this double height drum. This is the space here. The facade is reclad in certain elements, so we've got having renders of the external of the building done at the moment, so I don't know if that actually...
Well, they're not on there just yet.
Not on there? Okay, that's all right. We'll send those to you. We haven't done at the moment, but you'll be able to see when you see them how we're recladding the external components in like a bronze. And a lot of the architectural sort of design takes on the shrine as well. So there's kind of, in the way that we've done tiling and things, it's all kind of drawn on that sort of reference. And that's very much for the outside of the building as well, so there'll be new external elements applied in.
These columns look wider
They are, yeah. So what you'll see is that we're actually proposing to remove a lot of them.
Okay, so they're getting thinned down, so ignore
yeah,
what
so
you're seeing
what's funny about this building is that 2 out of 3 pretty much are bits. So the ones that are structural, where you'll see there's structure within the columns, it is a much smaller portion than the column is showing. Exactly, yeah. So they're kind of made bigger to look grander, and that's the whole way to the ground floor. So we'll jump into the building. So that's sort of the outside. We'll walk back down to see if you understand what's going on there. But you can see just with the natural gradient of the building at the moment on the site, how we'll walk. How steep it is.
Drop a floor,
Yeah, so there's actually 2 basement levels that sit under us before we get from Kilda Road down to Wells Street, which is at the back of the building. So that's sort of awarded us what we're looking at doing, which is this opening at Park Street to create these extra retail tenancies.
This is a 360 camera, so it photographs forward, backward, up, down. So it means that we're basically scooping up a photographic record of all of the conditions while walking through.
So much better for reference and then we can come back to the building 500.
Exactly. What was behind me? What was in front of me? What was to my left when I was there?
Yeah, you can just reference that. So you can sort of see, and particularly with regards to the precast columns, just sort of the openings and where they stand in terms of relation to a full height person. So if we are looking at demolishing these stairs, which we are, there's a very slight ramp into basement 1, which sits under this podium level here. So that's sort of the gradient. You can sort of understand the difference as it relates to sort of a human scale.
So not yet entering directly through here?
Pretty much, yes. So there is a bit of a slight ramp down, but that's awarded us effectively sort of pedestrian access to a full level of basement. So that's that basement conversion that we're looking at doing. So it's a conversion from car park into retail. So this opening here is what we're proposing will be the opening for a supermarket tenancy. And then we open 2 parts of the cladding further towards Wells Street. One is for a direct end of trip entry, the other is for a direct pedestrian entry. So that takes you straight into the lift core, which we'll see in a moment, and up into the building that way. So you can get direct access.
By end of trip entry, what do you mean by that specifically?
So we have an end of trip in the building at the moment. We've actually pulled out that scope of work. So you know what an end of trip is? Sorry. End of trip is like a term for commercial buildings where it's like facilities for tenants within the building. It's a free amenity, and it is like bike access, bike parking, showers. There's sort of a few benchmarks around Melbourne. We would suggest that for this, because it's an A-grade asset, the best end of trip for an A-grade asset is probably 367 Collins Street, which is another Mirvac building. Really beautiful. It's sort of a way of using unused space and giving access to buildings. So if you get briefs from tenants now saying, we want to move buildings, an end of trip is something that they would always have on that. So it's like a tick box. They don't pay for it. It's an amenity. It's free of charge. And there's a bit of a competition in the market generally around trying to bring the best that they can give them. So, really beautiful, almost kind of like luxury retreat type spa sort of feeling in terms of design. But showers, lockers, bike parking, towel service, all that sort of thing for tenants. So Also, given that we're right next to the Botanic Gardens and we're sort of off the river, there's a big part to play in the fact that you can go for a bike ride, or go for a run at lunchtime, which moves the end of trip facilities, and go straight back up into the building. So we've actually stripped that body of work out from the rest of the works for the building. We are tendering that at the moment. So I don't know if Sammy talked to you about the lift lobbies and amenities and the on-floor make good works.
Yep.
So that's happening at the moment. We'll take you to one of those levels because that wayfinding needs to sort of flow through that component of the works, and then the end of trip is part of that as well. So we've stripped out the end of trip, we stripped out the lift lobbies and amenities, and then there's sort of this third scope, which is what we're talking about, which is the big sort of redevelopment piece, which is the upgrade of the lobby and all these facade and retail works as well. So we'll go up, we'll go through ground floor. So yeah, I suppose because we're sort of in the process of getting, I suppose, board Mirvac approval generally to spend the money to do these lobby works.
Yep.
We are going ahead with the other sort of smaller scopes of work, so these lift lobbies and amenities and end of trip work. So we need to kind of fast track the wayfinding and signage component for those so we can deliver them before delivering the rest of it. But obviously needs to tie in with everything.
And presumably the first scope of, the first package of works needs to sort of anticipate the second, or, if that, the larger package
Yeah, so the way it
works.
actually works, we, the development team, designed everything.
Yep.
And then as we've gone, we've stripped out components. Because it's not a new building, because it's an existing asset, an existing tenant. Do you want to put the bag down?
Oh, no, I'll carry it
Sure.
around. That's
That's all right.
just in my hand.
Yeah. Because we have sort of fast-tracked with the other components of works. Sorry, because normally we do everything together, so we signed everything together because it's an existing asset. The way that it's worked is that we've been able to get funding approval for certain scopes of works.
Yep.
The first scope is the on-floor works and the make good works, and the second scope is end of trip. So they're kind of happening in parallel, but they're separate to the rest of the works. So we anticipate everything else coming in the third wave of works and budget with that. So,
It's that sometimes that can affect sort of like the planning and the strategy of the wayfinding itself. So
yeah, exactly.
Directories are a classic on that, but we're looking at electronic ones for those.
Yep.
But there's can often be some other bits and pieces here and there that need to be updated as part of the second wave.
Exactly. It's a bit of a grey area of this building because there's a lot of wayfinding that's here that we will obviously replace, and then there's some wayfinding we're sort of not assuming that we'll need to replace. But from a statutory perspective, from
Compliance.
Compliance, fire engineering, all that sort of stuff, it all kind of needs to tie together.
Yeah.
So when you sort of start to pick it apart, you actually realise that we're almost redoing the whole building in terms of wayfinding signage, particularly because we're redoing all the on floors, and the back of house areas need to kind of fall into play as well. So when you look at it holistically, the whole building pretty much needs to be redone. So we'll need back of house signage and front of house signage. The front of house signage will need to be probably more premium, and we need to tie in with the finishes and the materiality that we're using for the upgrade. And that upgrade for the on-floor works, the end of trip, and all the base works that we're talking about now, the bigger sort of scope of works.
Yeah.
From a design perspective, they all work together. They're all cohesive. They're designed together to look the same, so that when we roll them out at the end of it, irrespective of where they're going to finish, it will all kind of look cohesive.
Yeah.
So the wayfinding needs to be part of that as well. So
the design work that's been done already is it's pretty comprehensive. That looks relatively straightforward in terms of, as I mentioned to Sam, it's kind of like curating the deployment of that, with maybe a few moments of joy here and there.
That's the idea.
A few moments of sort of take some license here and there.
But, and you would have seen, we'll keep walking because we'll walk through a bit of a lab. But you would have seen, I don't know if you had a chance to look through the ground plane zoning and wayfinding guidelines that are developed. So it's an interesting one because that was developed out of Sydney, and the intent of that document was that you could walk into a Mirvac asset and kind of know that without it being branded and without it being signage, it's a Mirvac asset, and get a sort of sense of feeling about that space. So we're kind of leaving it with the sort of prospective wayfinding consultant to take that and interpret that as they see. So some of them are sort of set, some of the elements are set in stone, things like the iconography in particular. That's an example of something that's like, we've developed that needs to be rolled out, but the rest of it's kind of a bit grey in terms of how much you want to take and use to produce the rest of it. So have you had a look at that document?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
So there's that document, and then there's also the branding guidelines as well as a separate.
So the branding's been done recently, and that's been done in respect of all of the other works that we've looked at. And we do hope, normally with a new development in particular, you do the branding and the sort of the marketing concept, and that can fall away at the end of the redevelopment, but we're hoping that it actually gets taken on and used as a building brand guidelines throughout the rest of its lifespan, or at least for the next 10 years.
Electronic signs are also really good for sort of extending the brand into its current flavour.
Yep, exactly.
As opposed to committing them to stone and concrete.
Yeah.
So that's a nice technique.
And I think with most of the buildings we're delivering at the moment, there's definitely a large element of digital, just because it gives you the flexibility you don't otherwise have when you do with stagnant signage.
Yes.
So I think there's a place for both, sort of fluid and static signage.
We're seeing a bit of a trend too with people realising that there needs to be sort of better operational signage as well, so that you can then deal with sudden outbreaks of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, and because there's a signage piece about what's going to be delivered at the end of it, but also there's going to be a massive, 18 months and 2 years of work in this building, and so there's sort of signage that we want to be able to take from that and play it into the staging of the actual construction as well. So it sort of becomes this cohesive branding for the building, and it sort of flows through from now all the way until completion and actual physical signs on the side.
Well, you need much in the way of, and this could be totally separate to the core brief, but say hoardings or...
Exactly. So that's why we've got all this branding kind of caramel packaging you would have seen, so that's going to play into that as well. But from a signage and wayfinding perspective, we would like, if we're implementing something now in the early stages, when we actually do the physical construction on the side, that can play part of the hoarding and the signage and the redirection piece as well.
Yes.
I think that would make sense.
We'll
it's not really part of the scope at the moment, but I think it will evolve into that.
We can add some line entries for those, just as a sort of like a course of, okay, well, you need 20 metres of it, then that would be X amount.
Exactly.
That's nice.
So this, if you're looking at the ground, so we're standing here on Kilda Road. So you can see the building comes all the way out. So there will be a glass line here, and then this portion of the floor plate, which sits in here, which is the north side of the floor plate, that becomes an office space, and that's to sort of absorb a lot of the retail that's here, because we've done a lot of research around it, and we think that the building is supporting to retail. Food and beverage is the best offer, but not as much space as we have currently. You can see that we've got what where you used to bank your CBA, haven't been there for 12 months, and nor have the agency. It just doesn't have that support in the local community to be able to support that sort of offering. So we're absorbing a lot of that, bringing it out and creating sort of 500 square metres tenancy in here. We actually want it to be co-working. So when we get to a point where the work start, we'll actually start leasing and doing that body of work until it becomes co-working. We think that's a really good story to play into the Anzac Station delivery, ground floor, level 2, which is the directly above level. That's also vacant at the moment. So we hope that potentially co-working provided that you can also
great work-life balance.
Exactly, So that's really, and that would be a really good amenity for the building as well. So a lot of tenants, when they've reached out to market, under some sort of flexibility in space, because they're saying, we don't want to commit to 10 years if we need to have some project space or otherwise. We can say to them, okay, we're going to co-working provided the building, or award you space within that tenancy to be able to have that flexibility if you have project work or otherwise. So that's sort of the intent of that building, the space there. This sort of double height entry here is quite large. You can sort of see it will wrap the extent of what will become a cylinder here. So all this will be raised to full height. And then at this point it steps down to the height that it's currently at. And this becomes all this internal colonnade. So the colonnade becomes wider along the left-hand side here. Will be sort of a mix of different types of breakout spaces and seating area. That will sort of be ancillary to support the retail, which will sit in here. And then there's another retail where we just came from. So we're broken up into 2 retail spaces. The design for those hasn't been yet confirmed, but it will need to be sort of cohesive with the rest of the palette that we've designed for the base building. And the same with signage, it will need to be sort of all in keeping with the rest of the building.
We need to deal with, say, the retail tenancies' signage constraints themselves. Do you have sort of documents about?
We will, yes, exactly. Yes, so we haven't.
Can and can't do that.
We have, yeah, we will. So what we're doing is we've got provision for the architects to do a design guideline for the retail tenancies. So it's pretty much in saying you can do this, you can do that in terms of the materiality. So giving them some flexibility, but in keeping with the rest of the building, because it's very part and parcel.
So from my point of view, that's taken care of.
Not from a signage perspective. Yeah, so at a point in time we will need to have signage, there will be branding guidelines, and we'll probably need input from the signage consultant into that guideline to say, okay, well, this is the design for the rest of the building, it needs to be in keeping with this to an extent. Particularly for these, because they're part and parcel to the building lobby, they're read in conjunction with it, so we probably need to be quite strict on how they procure and deliver their signage. It might even be as simple as saying, okay, you need to use a signage and wayfinding-based building consultant to procure your design for that. It could be that, we could just handball it over to them, or we could put some guidelines in place to make sure that it's...
Sure.
Yeah. So there's in here, we've got this sort of west lounge, so there's quite a large lobby lounge, and that's supposed to be a bit more corporate, because the rest of it's quite sort of retail focused, so this will sit in this space here. We're relocating what is currently the NAM office, which sits behind there too over here, and that sort of becomes a back of house space, and then that becomes this multi-function space here.
Okay, yeah.
So that's sort of otherwise dead space and completely unused. So that's this space here. So we're sort of standing here looking down there.
Yeah.
So we open that whole space up, block it off from here, and have sort of a semi-permeable kind of wall, so you can have function space in there. It's just more amenity for the building as well.
Yeah.
We should go. This bridge gets deleted as part of it, and in doing that, you then remove the access for level 2 tenants. So what we're doing is we're actually infilling these parts of the void that are currently open on either side of the lift court, and that becomes new access into level 2 of this space here. So this void is retained to this extent, but we remove these parts of the void here and here.
And there was I think you mentioned that there might have been some issues in relation to sort of like levels and floors and a bit of confusion in relation to wayfinding, mostly because of the bridge.
Like you said, part of it being this as well, the structure board. So I'm a bit confused with even just walking in, not knowing that the building manager's office is there, partly because he sort of is quite small.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Looks like a bit of a
Yeah, I mean, again, because of the building, we didn't deal with the building. We bought it sort of about 30 years ago. We've done work to it over time. But the signage is something that it's just a bit retrofitted. You can sort of see it's not really cohesive. It's not very clear. You wouldn't know from looking here how to get to the basement. There's a lot of sort of complexities with it, and understanding that a lot of people that have been in this building have been in the building for a long time, so they understand it.
Yeah.
But now we're going through this new generation of tenants coming in. We've got a lot of tenants leaving, and we're hoping to reposition this building to get new tenants in. So we'll need them and obviously their clients who will be visiting to have a very clear understanding of the wayfinding sort of parameters of the building.
And also with the increased amount of retail tenancies, you've got a lot of like first-time visitors.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, particularly downstairs as well, because like I said, we sort of want everything to be really permeable. We want, because there's a lot of population, it's residential, so at the back part of the building, sort of over towards Water Street and Albert Street, a lot of those populations.
So do you want to go to level 9 now?
Yeah, we can go to level 9, yeah. So we'll take you to the first floor that's been delivered. How many minutes have to get up there? So we'll have to put on PPE, sorry.
Beautiful. Message. Yeah, but in a couple of minutes.
So are we going up to 2?
Choose for PPE on.
Do we need to put PPE on?
Yeah, no, just
We have to get on that one.
yeah, so that's a pain.
They've changed, because all the construction works happening at the moment, they've changed around the lift, so we have to get to 2, we have to catch one of these.
Yep.
We have to wait until one of them's available.
How's it going?
Hey, how you going? Can you swipe us up?
Alright. Have you guys been up already?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have to wait for one of these.
Yep.
What do you look like? It's,
Two?
So yes, because there's Legwards Bridge, the new entry for this level will be this way.
Yeah.
So you effectively walk that way and you walk across what's then that infield piece of the void. You can go through that way back. So we're just going to put some people here for the construction. Go to look at them tomorrow.
Rob, just for your knowledge, that's what we're looking at, just the void. And instead of that bridge going across, it's now extending around.
Yeah. Okay. Da-da-da.